Hello, once again. Welcome back to another episode of whatever the series is. Today, I wanted to sit down and talk with yet another fellow creative, dear friend, scriptwriter this time, Jordan P. Gifford. Jordan has been a frequent collaborator with myself. I've known him for a bit over 2 years now. We've done a number of projects together as a writer-director collaboration. I've also worked on a number of his films because he's a director himself as well. He's a writer, director, stand-up comedian. I've been to a number of his stand-up gigs as well. He's an incredibly funny guy, very talented guy. And today we wanted to sit down and talk about the relationship between pain and art. Is there some connection? Is pain essential for art? If so, why? And how we go about manifesting a lot of the vulnerabilities and the raw emotion into our art forms. Hope you enjoy. Okay, so Jordan, pain, art. Is pain essential for art or writing? Tell me.
Is pain essential for art?
Yeah.
I think that it is for me. I mean, I don't know whether that is essentially
A
just
universal
me thing, or
statement.
is that another thing? But I mean, the fact is, I'd say that for example, I think that I've grown into that. So I remember for years when I was writing beforehand, I would shy away from anything that was, I guess you'd say, real. So, for example, like I wouldn't write about my dad for years.
You
I think
wouldn't.
I wouldn't know. I it was probably for me uh, kind of the breakthrough for that would be something like right in terms not breakthrough for that, but breakthrough for writing about personal stuff would be Man in the Suit, and then
Mm.
from Man in the Suit, when I was more comfortable with working and writing stuff that was personal to me, then came kind of like being able to like write about my dad in terms of like the stand up and stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I think that it came and but it all kind of came down from me doing Man City, because for years, like all my first kind of films and my first kind of writing, they were all kind of very just kind of more imaginative kind of
Mm. I mean,
I
I would
guess
say Husband of Faith, for example, that's a pretty like deep, like
it is, but
vulnerable-ish
I don't
kind
think
of
it felt personal to me. I don't think it did.
fair.
So, like I think that with that, like it was, like you say, it's very emotional.
Do you
And
think
it's
it's
very
more
it,
of a, do you think that's more of like a shell level or like an outer layer kind of level of
I think so, yeah, I think it is. I think that was what it was. It was more like before the kind of the breakthrough. I think that I just talked on a shell surface level, and at
mm,
the time that was enough. You know,
mm,
like that was enough. And I think that a lot of people do that in general. I think that a lot of people don't really delve too deep into stuff when they're doing it, especially in the early years, because I think that you're not really comfortable in yourself as an artist. You're not really comfortable in yourself as a person. So I think that when I got a bit older and I got a bit wiser, that was kind
hey.
of well, you can argue that. When I got a bit older and I was more comfortable in doing stuff like
Yeah.
that, I think it works better because actually that's what you. But for years, I shied away from doing it in any
Mm.
kind of aspect, whether that be when I was my brief stint as a musician,
Oh yeah, there's that as well.
or any of that kind of thing. I kind of just didn't do it. And it was only, I'd say, in the last 3 to 4 years, and I
Yeah.
was doing this for what 3 to 4 years prior to that, and
Yeah.
it was only a recent thing.
Because you've been writing for a very long time, isn't it? You were when you were you were in a band and you were a
Yeah.
songwriter,
So
and
that
then writing
was
lyrics, you kind of realized that wait a second, I'm pretty good at this stuff.
yeah, and then I realized I wasn't very good at the music part.
Well, I'm very, very glad that you ended up in the screenwriting side of things. We've collaborated like a ton of times, and it's always been a pleasure. And yeah, I agree. I don't necessarily know if this is a universal statement or not, and I definitely wouldn't say it's essential for art.
No, I don't
I
think it
don't
is. I
think
don't
I'm
think I
there
think
yet.
you can.
Yeah, because you can make art when you're happy as well. You can make art when you're sad, but there's definitely something to be said about the art that comes as a result of pain. Uh,
Mm.
this isn't, by the way, in any way to like glorify pain in any measure or mean at all. This is just reflecting on the fact that how artists utilize personal like pain, emotional pain, trauma to make art. I just wanted to
It's
like
more of it's
clarify
a
that.
channel. It's a
Exactly.
channel. There you go. It's a
Exactly. There
channel.
you go.
It's
Boom.
a channel. So it's a kind of like what's about? It's like kind of release kind of thing. That's what
Yeah.
that's what I see it is now. Whereas like I guess so what I see it as is like this. It's like in the early years, it's kind of like an escape
Mm.
because you didn't want to feel the pain you had, so you escaped from it by doing this. Whereas now, when you get to this kind of point where you feel a bit older and you feel a bit comfortable doing it, you use
Mm.
it as more of like a vessel to kind of say what you want and say how you feel. And I think that that's where the pain becomes something slightly different because it's like it's not when you're no longer touching that surface area, you're probably going into it and you're probably better for it because of it. So going back to the idea, do you think it is necessary? I think it is if you want to make something that's honest. So that's what I
Mm.
think is something that's important. I think that the kind of what we talk about pain and is it essential? If you want to make something that's honest and that's something that people be like, oh, I get that,
Yeah.
then yeah. If you want to do something that's kind of surface level and a bit fun and a bit da da da, then yeah, you don't have to.
Yeah.
If you want to do something that people will engage with and will be like, oh, I understand that, yeah, I get that. Then that if that's what the reaction you want, then I think then you kind of have to have that because otherwise it's kind of disingenuous. If
Mm.
you don't kind of actually mean and feel what you're saying, then I think that an audience will get that. So if you're trying to do something that's surface level but pretending to not be, then I
Mm.
guess that like that's kind of when it gets tripped up a little bit, unless you're actually speaking from somewhere that you've been to before.
What I really sort of find interesting, like you mentioned, Man in the Suit is the first script that you've written that came from like a real place of vulnerability, and I
Yeah,
remember reading the script. I was part of the crew as well. I've seen the final film as well. I'll probably link it down below. I like. Is there a review? Is there a trailer? Like, I'll link something down below. But I just remember reading the script a day before filming. Um, but uh, I just remember just connecting to it so much. So, talk to me about the process of breaking through that shell and really opening up yourself onto a piece of paper.
well, for me, that I mean, that script is it's like it's basically about for sure. It's about being lonely, and it's about
Mm,
feeling a bit lost. And that was what I felt at the time. I was living in a place I didn't want to live in. I felt
mm,
like my career in making film, I was probably about 3 or 4 years in, and I just felt like I wasn't going anywhere. Felt like
mm,
it stagnated a little bit, and I just felt that um, I just felt very very kind of lost, and I was very lonely. I just had like a breakup. I think it was from like a 10-month-old girlfriend, and it was just kind of
damn.
like it was kind of like being angsty, but like in a more mature way. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
you're like I think I was probably about I don't know 22, maybe about then,
That's a
and
really good script for
but
22.
but the thing is, like, it started off. This is the weirdest. It started off as a short story, and I'd
Right.
never written a short story before. I didn't think I could, so I kind of wrote it down like that, and it wasn't very good.
Mm, mm,
So I kind of was like, I want to try and write this as a script,
mm.
and I think I wrote 2 drafts of it, and then we shot the second draft. It was
Amazing.
one of those things where it's like it's probably I mean that was probably the best writing experience because like I wrote one draft and it had a narrator, and then
Yeah. I don't think I read that version.
no, I don't think you did because the only person who did was our mutual friend, Mr. Jacob Payne,
Oh,
and
lovely. Oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah, Mr.
Nice.
Jacob Payne. He basically said to
Mr.
me,
Payne, yeah.
get rid of the narrator," and as soon as I got rid of the narrator, it completely
It,
finalized the script, and then from that
yeah.
point,
It became more of like a jigsaw puzzle for people
became
to sort of like figure out.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It became more of a personal story rather than hearing it from someone else. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mm,
if when you have a
yeah.
narrator doing it, it's kind of like you're a bit you're taken away from it because you're like, oh, it's this guy saying this story. Whereas if it's the actual person doing it, then you'll feel like you're actually immersed in it.
Mm. So, okay. Um, I want to take it slightly back and you're talking about you're 22, you've just gone through like a horrible breakup, you're at a place where you don't want to be, you feel like career wise you're kind of stagnating, even though you're 22, by the way. Like, I just want to
Yeah.
take a moment to like we're well into like our mid to late 20s now, and like we just
Yep, a
say like
little bit.
take it chill, like it's fine.
I mean, if I was talking to myself back then, I would be like, take a chill.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
unfortunately, we don't
it's
have that in
difficult
high
to
school.
say that. Yeah, it's difficult to say that to yourself at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why we say it now to anyone who needs to hear it. So I wanna really sort of like get into the sort of mental side of things, like the emotional side of things. What was the journey like emotionally? Like, you're feeling all of this stuff, and I'm sure a lot of it isn't great. How do you go from that to I'm gonna write a script, or like I've written a script and here's what I'm gonna write about?
I think it was. I mean, for me anyway, like writing stuff down has always been a necessity throughout my life. In terms of like,
Mm,
I remember writing. Um, you just I've always written. Like I can always remember
yeah.
always reading. When I was 10 years old, I wrote a 20-page handwritten shitty story that I thought was a novel.
That's amazing.
So like I've done stuff. I found that like two years ago, and it was awful. I wrote that when I
Oh,
was
we've
like
got to
10
read
years
that
old.
sometime.
It was god awful. But like so that was kind of the thing that I did, and I think during those years that I was in that where I wrote a lot of stuff, and this was just one of the ones that happened to be good, and
Mm,
it was one of the things that happened to be good. It's kind of like, but I can remember how it started. Like I remember like the first idea I had for it was
go
this
for it.
really kind of grandiose idea of like if you had basically about ego. That's what the script is about. And it's about the
Mm,
idea of like if you have no one to show off to in this. So obviously, if anyone does, the point of the man in the suit is it's a guy that is survived the end of the world,
yeah,
and it's him alone on this world. It's the idea of that is it's like if you are the only person on the planet,
yeah.
and what happens to the human ego? Like if there's no one else to show off to. And that was something that really interested me, mainly because everyone had a go at me for having a massive ego. That was the main reason it kind of came about. But it's actually an
Yeah.
interesting thing because when you think about it, it's just like if you sit there and think what happens to yourself when you sat there, you're alone. You're this small person on this huge world,
So
and it's
insignificant
not.
all of a sudden.
It's
That's
so
really cool.
insignificant, and that's what kind of drove me to it. Because at the same time as well, when you feel horribly lonely, you feel
Mm,
insignificant, and that was where
mm.
that kind of link went from.
Yeah. There's definitely like something to be said about what happens to the ego when you're lonely, um and feeling insignificant. And I love that you sort of like turned what people were telling you about your ego on its head.
Yeah,
It's like, well, guess if I'm the expert on ego, let me write something about it.
I guess
Uh,
it's kind of like a big it, isn't it? I mean, it's not meant to swear. Sorry,
it's
it's
all
a, it's
right.
a, it's
I'll bleep
it's a,
you
it's a,
out.
it's a big boo hoo to them.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Vulnerability. It's a bit of a leap of faith. I don't know. I feel a bit wrong saying that, but it's a leap of something when you're
Mm-hmm.
like, screw it, I'm just gonna expose myself, like open myself up to this piece of paper. And I don't know. I find that this is where I'm talking a bit about the process, right? I tend to firstly not judge what I'm gonna write, especially the first draft, especially when I'm doodling, when I'm feeling something some kind of way, and I feel like these are emotions or vulnerabilities that I need to put down on page, and I'm still kind of figuring out materializing that cloud of ideas. Um, the most important thing for me is to tell myself not to judge myself on
Yeah,
whatever I'm writing down. It can
yeah,
seem teenage drama angsty AF, right? Like, but so what? If you read this is the obligatory Nolan reference, right? If you read the Dark Knight screenplay, a lot
yeah,
of the Joker's dialogues, they seem very angsty teenage, like emo,
yeah,
right? But it's the performance that brings it out. But
yeah.
um I always like to sort of like think back. Of course, going from script to screen will change entirely.
Which change
Um,
everything.
but yeah, what kind of advice, or what kind of talk about your process? Talk to me about your process. Like, what I start by not judging myself. How do you start?
I start by kind of just, for me, it's all, I see pretty much everything I'm doing in my head.
Yeah,
So it's like so the key for me is always like, I will write something that I want to see.
yeah,
So it's as simple as that for me. In that, if I want to see it, then I know that I want to make it. And
fair.
I think that it's one of those things where it's like, if you can get something, everyone will have a niche,
Mm,
or not even. I don't want to say niche because it makes it sound like it's gonna be small. Everyone has an audience. You know what I mean? So it's
yeah,
like, as long as you trust yourself, as long
yeah,
as you trust what you want and you trust what you can do,
mm,
then I think that it doesn't really matter about anything else. Like, you write an idea and you trust that idea, that you trust
mm,
it, and then you'll find other people. You'll find the right people along the way that will also trust you to do that, and that's what is important. Because I don't think there's anyone out there who shouldn't try and write something, because I think that that's fucking
yeah,
silly. I think that that's very silly.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think that you should 100% just trust that. And for me, it's like, I'll write something, and in my head, like, I'm like, I can see it. I can see what that's going to be. I can see that
mm,
people like it. I can see when there's going to be a laugh and there's going to be a look here. I can
yeah,
see whatever. But I mean, that doesn't even necessarily have to be the case for everyone, because everyone is
yeah,
different. I mean, there's things as well, like, you've been on my shoots, like, things change in a second. Like, I could
yeah,
be like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
I
Very
want something
improv.
different
Yeah,
here, and then we
yeah,
did it. So
yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
that's not that important. As long as the idea that you have a relatively clear idea of what you want, and you know
Exactly.
that you trust it. That's all the advice I can give, is to trust what
Yeah,
you want.
that's
Because
true.
I think if you don't trust what you want, no one else is gonna.
That's true. I think another way to put that would be, yeah, just listen to yourself. Be
Mm,
open to listening to your inner voice or your inner feelings, and be transparent with yourself. Because if you're kidding yourself, then the audience is going to see right through what you've
mm,
written, what you've made.
100%.
Um,
And not
one
just
of
the
the,
audience. I think other people, the people that work on the thing, they will
yeah,
also see through it.
absolutely. One of the ways in which I try to write whenever I do get the motivation to is, like, I sometimes get like a sentiment or a feeling, or something, an emotion that I latch onto. And that could come from inspiration, like, I don't know, just going out for a walk, or having watched another film, or seeing a piece of art, reading a book, anything, right? So I sometimes get this, like, you can get this sort of like sensation that you latch onto, and you're like, yo, this is a really complex, emotional, like, mind like thing that I'm feeling right now, and I would want other people to feel like this. So let me now write a story that, like, takes the audience by the hand and takes them through to make them, like, crescendo at that.
Yeah.
Like, I know that's another way that I use um to write a script. That's basically what La La Land is for me.
I mean, to us, I feel like that's a little bit like what my new one, Smoking Fish, is going to be.
Ooh, Smoking Fish. Tell us
So,
a bit
so,
about that.
so this basically is a weird origin story. So when I was probably about the same time that I wrote Man in the Suit,
Hmm.
I was working a really shitty job where I
Hmm.
was like Sainsbury's bakery boy at about 4 a.m.
Damn.
Right, and it was like 4 a.m. starts, awful stuff. Would never be able to sleep before, so I'd be kind of sleep deprived. But I'd come up
Essential
with
worker though,
comedy,
gotta respect.
essential worker, woo. But I come up with like weird shit, weird stuff. So, weird. I've come up with weird stuff, and
Yes.
one of these things is, one day was I had this idea.
Hmm.
The sketch. It was going to be a comedy sketch. It was going to be called The Endangered Species, right?
Lovely.
And it was basically a guy in a fish costume smoking and dying of lung cancer, but he wanted to get money for his like medical bills by pretending he was an endangered species of fish that was dying and needed charity.
That's so
Right?
cool.
Awful sketch. No one liked it ever. But the idea of a smoking fish like stuck
Yeah.
with me for years,
Yeah.
absolute years. And
So
then
it's that
about,
visual,
oh
isn't it,
god,
that you're
yeah,
stuck
the
to.
visual. Yeah. So
Yeah.
a guy, and then this fast forward about 2 years ago.
Mm.
I was having a conversation with, I think it was Lissy. We were talking about Man in the Suit stuff, right? And then
We're
for
getting
some
Lissy on an
reason,
episode as well, by the way, so we're watching out
yeah,
for
well,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Lissy Simpson,
Yes.
we were talking, and then I just had this weird image of like this guy in a fish costume just walking down a hill,
Mm-hmm.
and that was it. I knew from then what I wanted to do for that film. From that moment on, it
Amazing.
just grew, and
This is
it's
yeah.
now grown a little bit more. So the kind of concept of the film is
You've got a
about a
short
guy
film script and a feature film script as well
and a
for that,
feature.
right?
Yeah, the feature is going to be
Yeah.
fun, and but the short that we're in the middle of trying to make, but COVID has made that a bit fun.
I know. I
Um,
know.
so we the basic premise is it's a guy who has to walk about 3 or 4 miles in the countryside to go to see his son.
Mm.
But he has to do this entire thing while dressed as a fish,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's one of the funniest things in the world already.
It
It's
is,
just like the
yeah.
guy having to do that in the fish, but it's a really kind of nice story because it's about, again, it links into the whole thing. It's about a guy who loses a daughter.
Mm.
So he basically, as he kind of exited his family, he couldn't deal with it, and then now he's trying to get his family back. So he's trying to get to
Mm.
his son in time for his scheduled kind of like meeting with his son. And he knows that if he
Mm.
doesn't do it this time, he's probably going to lose complete
He's gonna
custody of
lose
the
the
child.
entire family, yeah, or whatever family he's got
Mm.
left.
But it's kind of interesting thing because this, for example, would probably be the first time that it would be like a script about my dad, for example. So I'm dedicating this film to my
Mm.
granddad and my dad. So my dad obviously died when I was 13, and this is a
Mm.
switch of that. Instead of a son losing a father, it's a father losing a
Father losing
child.
a child,
And
yeah.
it's also a kind of thing because my granddad recently died of COVID, so it's a kind of nice thing for him because
Yeah.
he was a father who lost a son. So it's a nice little
Yeah.
thing for that.
Yeah. Damn. This is like it's heavy stuff, right? Like talking about this is heavy stuff, but
Honestly, though, it's a funny film. So I mean,
it's
don't get it. There's a lot of laughs in it.
yeah. No, but that's the thing, right? Like I was gonna come to this point where just because we're talking about pain producing art doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be bleak and sad and
It isn't.
like
It is. This
gloomy.
film's very hopeful. Like it's
Yeah.
actually a very, very hopeful film. Like the
Yeah.
ending, I don't want to give anything away from it, but the ending is really quite sweet. It's probably one of
Amazing.
the sweetest things that I've actually ever written. It's like it's poster worthy. That's how it's very.
Amazing.
It's
I'm
oh,
looking
it's lovely.
forward to this film being made. I
Yeah,
cannot
it's gonna be
wait.
great.
Um, and yeah, no, exactly. That's the thing. I think that is also like a reflection of how we see or try to deal with certain emotions as well, right? Like clearly it's coming, having this hopeful ending is coming from a place that, that's you telling yourself that things are going to be okay. I mean, I don't want to give away the
Well, I
ending
mean,
or
not just
anything
things
at
are gonna
all,
be
but
okay. I mean, for me, things were,
yeah,
like my dad died, 12, 13 years ago,
yeah,
maybe 14 years ago,
yeah.
and like it was shit for a bit, but then I mean, it was bad for a bit,
Mm,
but then I got boot, and now it's what I see as a good thing, a positive thing in many ways. It's been a driving force rather than something holding me back. So
does
I feel like
making,
in the sense of that,
yeah. Does making art or writing scripts inspired from these events, does that help you talk about um
yeah,
these events
I mean,
to other
simple
people?
as that. I mean, well, yeah, definitely. Like for example, probably about 4 years ago, I would never have done a stand-up gig solely about their dad.
Mm,
Like
mm,
simple as that. Like that was
yeah.
like if there was no way that I would literally do a thing literally called the dad tour, and then
Mm.
there's no way that I would stand up there and do a stand-up gig for however long it was,
Yeah.
talking solely about that. But I
I
wouldn't
was
have done that.
there. I remember
Yeah,
I
exactly. I was
recorded
about to
it
say
on this
you would
very
be my
camera.
long-serving stand-up comedian cameraman, and
Yes.
it's And there's no way that would have happened 5 years ago, but not even 3 years ago. But then Man in the Suit,
Mm,
like I said, with the turning point where it allowed me to get into that, and then smoking fish and comedy stuff, it gradually works.
mm,
It does. I mean, there's no more proof than you have than that. If you look at chronologically, the kind of
mm.
projects that I did, this led me to that.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is it's a gradual process. And you've got to start somewhere. You can't judge yourself. Sometimes a visual cue, an emotional cue helps, but you just got to keep on digging and stay true to yourself as you're sort of like going
Yeah,
deeper and deeper and deeper. Not everything has to come
the
out.
older you get, the better you get at it. In terms of
Yeah. And I
being
suppose the
able
more you
to,
do it as well.
yeah, exactly. The
Yeah.
more you do it, but I think that the older you get, the more kind of mature and
Yeah.
experiences you have, the
Yeah.
experiences you have of multiple things and
Yeah.
people around you. People, I think you need to. A lot of people kind of think that they're the dogs. They think they're the best ever, and they're not. Unless without the help of other people,
Yeah.
like you can learn so much. Like I learned so much from you on for the first time. And like the thing is, if you don't learn from the people if you don't learn from your peers and your friends, then you're
Yeah.
missing a trick. It's all about learning.
True.
It's all about learning and gaining experience. No one is made. No one is technically self-made. I don't believe in that.
No.
You're
It's a very collaborative
made
thing. It's
by
that
it's a very
community
connected
aspect.
community.
So okay, so this leads us on very nicely to the next point where, why does it work? Why is art that comes from a place of pain, why do people connect with it? I mean, not everyone watching Man in the Suit would have, been 22, like stagnated career, or like gone through a breakup, but still there's something that they connect with.
So what they would connect with there was, I think, that everyone's been lonely. I think everyone has
Yeah,
felt out of place. I think you say no, everyone's had a breakup. I think everyone probably has had a breakup. I think they probably have. I mean, the majority of
it's
people, I think,
fair.
will.
That's absolutely
I
fair.
think, I think the majority of people will have had a breakup. They will
Mm.
understand that feeling of being
Loss.
isolated and lost.
Mm.
I think that everyone feels that. I think that
Mm.
it's a very human thing to want to fit in somewhere and have a community. And I feel like if you feel like you're not in one, then you feel in a terrible place. And I feel like that's why
Mm.
people would go. I feel in terms of why um, vulnerability and pain works in film is because that's a universal thing. There's no getting away from it. At some point in your life, you're gonna go through some trials and tribulations, and sometime in your life, you're gonna go through something that you don't want to. You're not comfortable in,
That's
and
very true.
it's that's why it's one of those things. It's like everybody will see something in something, even if it's not the
Yeah,
exact thing that the artist or the writer or whatever wanted you to portray. If you see something in it, then that's
yeah,
it's not a bad thing. I mean,
yeah,
one of the things that I love about this kind of community of people is that it's a community. I'm a very
yeah.
social person. I love the idea of talking to people. I love reacting to people. I love experiences with people. And
Mm.
I think that if you don't have that, then life can be very sad and very lonely. And I feel like that's why people like art, because
Just the
you
way you
see
deal with,
things,
yeah.
mm,
Because what
and you
else are we
see
gonna do,
different.
right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to go and I don't know, working at school, am I? I'll get kicked out pretty quick.
Yeah, no. So I'm not gonna be working in the city anytime soon.
I got
I'm
fined after 6 days last time I tried that, so I'm not gonna try it again.
damn. That's a story for another time. I feel like, but no, I completely see what you mean. It's I feel like there's something for a lack of a better word, I'm going to invent a new one. There's a certain degree of connectability with something that's very raw and emotionally just open. Right? I feel
Well,
like
that's the thing. That's why I think I said it earlier. Like the biggest reason is I think it's because it's honest,
yeah, yeah,
and I think that people love honesty because
yeah.
there isn't actually that much of it.
Yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
especially when you're reading by yourself or when you're watching a
Mm,
film, that's a very personal and private connection you have with the art
mm,
and you as the viewer. So
yeah.
there's literally no need for the ego to be there.
No.
It is just you connecting with the art and the artist in a sense. So you are essentially connecting your inner raw self with hopefully the inner raw self that the script
Yeah.
writer director has placed on the screen for you or the paper for you. um I feel like that's why it works. um from the artist's point of view, it's also very therapeutic. I
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah.
we've
No.
talked
Definitely.
about how how making art like this has allowed yourself to open up and talk much more freely about your dad's death, about your granddad's passing as well. um and it's I feel like that allows us as artists to grow, become more
Yeah.
mature. Also gives us like a unique spin on grief as well, because again, as you said, it's a
definitely.
universal thing. A lot of people feel grief. We get that.
Yeah.
But then coming up with the idea of having a guy dressed in a fish costume smoking, like
Yeah.
that's beautiful. Like that's you dealing
it's
with that.
because it's like that is what I like for me the way that I always dealt with it was through humor, and I think this is different because what it used to be humor to deflect, but now it's no longer humor to deflect. It's humor to kind of engage.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's changed. Is it's that when you get to a point where you don't want to deflect anymore, you like actually you want to go it on, you want to engage, and you want to have a conversation about grief. I mean, like it's I think it's
Also, this is
vital.
what you've just described is a great character arc, by the way. If someone's looking for ideas for a script, like going from like humor to deflect to humor to engage.
There you go.
There you go.
I'm a great character arc. There you go. Rock and roll.
Love it.
I've already been looking for rights to my life story. So if anyone's interested,
hit him up. So if you were to summarize a lot of the stuff that we've talked about a lot of therapeutic stuff. We talked about the process. We talked about just the importance of manifesting your pain into an art form. So if you've got like a young aspiring writer out there somewhere or an artist out there, how would you summarize the stuff that we've talked about just now?
Get a dead dad.
It's okay. You can make that joke. That's completely legit.
Yeah, it's great. It's fine. Keep this in actually because I think this is great.
Yeah.
But no. Just don't be afraid of an idea. Don't be afraid to leave yourself open for it. Because I think that if you do leave yourself open for it, it will take you to a place that firstly you'll find interesting, and I think other people will find quite endearing. And I think that being open and honest and transparent and clear is something that people like. I mean, at the end of the day, like I think that if you keep writing stuff that's like you don't really care about, eventually people will be like, well, I don't really care about it either.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, whereas like if you write something that's personal and means something to you, then you'll find people that are like, okay,
yeah,
I like this. This is
that
cool.
will shine through.
This is something interesting. This is something we can connect with. So I just think the thing is to be as honest as you can in your writing, and also to, I guess, not be afraid to talk about anything really. If it matters to you, then it will matter to someone else, and that's what's, I guess, important.
Solid. Last thing, quick as you can. How'd you keep faith as a creative?
Huge ego.
Huge ego definitely helps.
I think it's a mixture of. I mean, that's a complete lie. I think a lot of it is self-confidence, in that, like, if I ever doubt myself, I just slap myself silly until I get back into believing it. I guess very supportive friends, very supportive family and whatnot. I think it's just that. I mean, but I guess you have to be confident in yourself. Otherwise, you fight a losing battle. But you've got to stay true to it. I guess. Yeah, that's what it is.
I think to echo what you said when you were talking about Man in the Suit, even if you are finding the creative journey difficult, you can write a script about it. You can turn those feelings into a beautiful script.
That's the best material.
100%. Jordan, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for talking about such valuable stuff. We're definitely having you on for another episode.
Yeah,
we've only just tread the surface.
It's been fun. Anytime.
Take care, Jordan.
Ciao, Bella.
All right, let's stop it. That was my conversation and episode with Jordan P. Gifford. I've linked all the stuff down there. Check it out, including his script and his Man in the Suit trailer. I think there should be like a review or something down there as well. Check it out. I hope you found stuff that we said interesting, talking about our process, talking about how we convert feelings, emotional vulnerabilities, pain into art, and why it kind of works. So if you found some value out of that, if you found that anything resonated with you or didn't resonate with you, if you've got anything to say, comment down below. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, share, all of that beautiful stuff. I'll see you on the next one.